Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another Real Life Chats with Kim. We're broadcasting live here at Bold Radio Station. I have my guest today. I feel like I've known this gentleman for a long time, and that's because of his generosity and kind energy that he can send through the technical airwaves. So I'm really excited about my guest today. Before I bring him out of that comfortable Bold Radio Station green room, a few things here. My partner, Lynn Brunette, and I have launched the Bold Broadcaster Project. It's all about collaboration, motivation, and education for those who have been broadcasting via radio show or podcast for the last minimal 90 days. You have to have 90 days under your belt. We are doing a 3-month, 90-day program to help you really leverage your shows. Seems like everybody's out there teaching everybody how to get these shows up and out the door and podcasts up and out the door, but okay, it's like we're trying to throw that spaghetti up against the wall and the spaghetti's not sticking. And here we go with the food analogy at lunchtime, Eastern Standard Time. So if you're interested, please just go to boldradiostation.com under the contact sheet and just send us an email and we'll get in touch with you ASAP. Hey, a big shout out to the Bold Radio Station team. I adore them. I love them. They are the best. The producers, Damian Nesha, Ingrid, who makes the wheels go round. She is our WD-40 of the wheel. If Ingrid doesn't have her hands on it, it's not going to happen here at Bold Radio Station. Amazing. And then, of course, Lynn Brunette, who is a high energy, everybody bunny partner of Bold Radio here. So, big shout out. These shows can't get up and out the door without these guys. And they work hard, and I adore them. They're the best and love them. All right. Let's get started here because I don't want to waste another second with this gentleman, Dave Sanderson. Dave Sanderson is the managing partner of his firm, Dave Sanderson Speaks Enterprises, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And on January 15th, 2009, Dave was the last passenger off the plane that crashed into the Hudson River, best known as the Miracle on the Hudson, and was largely responsible for making sure so many others made it out safely. In addition to speaking and training, Dave conducts workshops and his next book was recently launched. Those are some sorry here with my grammar, called Moments Matter, in which he discusses how Employee 12 resources was the key factor that turned a potential tragedy into a miracle, and how one defining moment can create a lifetime of purpose. Indeed, Dave and his wife, Terry, reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they have 4 children, Chelsea, Colleen, Courtney, and Chance. Dave, come on out. Thank you so much for being here and being my guest today. It was a little bit of a bumpy road, you and I, getting to this show today.
Well, I tell you, everybody has a bumpy road to get someplace, and as long as you get there, that's the key thing. And thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, I got to tell you, since it's been so long since how you and I came together here, being a guest on the show, and then we've connected on social media. Your children are beautiful, very, very, very nice looking family.
Well, I'll give all the credit to my wife. She has all the looks. I'm just there to make sure it all happens. Thank you for that, Phil.
You're a smart man, Dave.
29 years will do that for you.
Either you guys learn or you don't. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Now it takes 2 to tangle there to raise that family. Dave, I don't even know where to begin. Let's just jump right in. Let's just jump right in with your business. How long has your firm, Dave Sanderson Speaks Enterprises, been around, and what exactly does Dave Sanderson Speaks offer?
Well, that's great. Thank you for asking. So technically, we've been around for 2 years, but this has been in the works since right after the plane crash in 2009, when I started speaking primarily in the South, and then it grew all over the world. So that's when 2 years ago we decided to go ahead and just leave the company that I was with and start my own company called Dave Sanderson Speaks Enterprises. And it's speaking is the primary sort of the focus, but it's really branched out to we've got 2 books that are out now that we're really proud of. One that I contributed to, one that I wrote. And then I was also very fortunate to be able to have people who wanted to consult with me and not only learn some from the experiences of what happened that day and the things that I talk about, but my experiences with Tony Robbins and the years I was head of security for him and some of the strategies and lessons I learned from him that can be applied, that I used that day and can be applied in business. So between that and now a new video product coming out, it's we're just trying to branch out and give everybody the whatever way they want to learn, give them the opportunity to learn, whether it's audio, visual, or kinesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and we all learn differently. So, all right. So you were someplace else prior to launching your business. And I'm assuming it was with Tony Robbins before you stepped out onto your own, right, Dave?
I did that really on the side. I was a sales manager for a company by the name of Oracle. When I traveled for 30 years, I was in sales and sales management. I worked with Tony basically on weekends and on my time off to support him and his mission. So I was doing two things along with doing everything else that I was doing.
Okay, you have a lot of energy, and I'm going to tell you something, Dave. You're not old enough to have given all that time at that other, and then having no, you're not old enough. But how did you get involved with Tony Robbins and being head of security?
Well, it was interesting because back in the early '90s, I went to one of his events. I was curious, and I was really into personal development. So I went to one of his events in San Diego, and all of a sudden, I actually started doing something that most people don't. I actually started applying the things that I learned, and became the number one salesperson at the company I was with that year. About 2,000 salespeople, lost 30 pounds, and all of a sudden, you get a little bit of success and you want more. So I started volunteering for his events, basically being that guy or that gal that at midnight are putting down brochures for the next day. But his former wife got put in a situation at one of the events in Hawaii, and I just happened to be around, and I handled the situation for her. And she said, "You did that pretty well. Would you like to sort of sit on the security team?" I said, "That's a heck of a lot better than handing out brochures at midnight." So I sat in his green room for 1 week, basically not moving and watching how these things happen. And over the next several months, I gained his trust and started doing more for him. And then a couple of years later, became his assistant security director. And a couple of years later, became his head of security, which meant I not only managed the team, but managed him and all the logistics around him, which was a tremendous experience to be around not only him, but the people he hung with, which is equally impressive.
Yes.
So that taught me a lot, and I use all those skills today, and used a lot of skills that day during the Miracle on the Hudson.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure a lot of the skills back in corporate America, so to speak, when you were in sales and climbing those ladders and doing all of that. There's so many skills there that a college education can't even provide for us. Because in my prior life, I'm a corporate America girl as well, and so. You went from corporate and then made the step over into your own business.
That's correct. And it was, one thing, Tony was always on my case about going into business for myself. Every time I pick him up, say, "Have you started your own business yet?" And I had to keep giving excuses. And one thing that Tony doesn't like is excuses. There's just no excuses. Yeah. So when I made that decision, it was quite a leap. And I really had to get my wife to buy in. That was the biggest hurdle I had because she likes health insurance. And with all the health insurance stuff going on in this country, it was getting that figured out was a challenge. But, it's interesting. I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about business, and I did know a lot about business from the revenue generation side, but I didn't know a lot about business from the administration side, which was an eye-opening experience for me, which took me back a little bit, to be very candid. It's a lot of entrepreneurs have told me I did it sort of backwards, where most people have the administration and have a hard time generating revenue. I had not the generating revenue issues. I had the getting paid and all the things you have to do to get revenue.
Yes.
Challenges. Yeah. So that was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave, because I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, and, a lot of people have this misguiding vision mentality of, "Hi, I launched my business today, and in 90 days, I'm going to be as famous as Tony Robbins and making just as much money." Yep. And it's like, well, gosh, did you forget about the alphabet? That there's a lot between A and Z, and and
Right.
even and we don't even conquer the whole alphabet in a lifetime. I believe. I mean, sure, we collect some of the alphabet as we get older with wisdom and things, but there's so much. There really is so much there than just waking up and you have 4 children, of course. Before taking that leap of faith. Making sure the children are cared for, and especially like your wife is saying, I like my health
Yeah.
insurance, and we do have a lot of that.
Benefits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the benefits. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. I mean, that's the other thing, owning a business, it's like, okay, and you want to step away from all that corporate, corporate has its pros and cons. Same with owning a business. But I want to jump on in, you know, um, uh, first of all, I can't believe it was in 2009. Seems like yesterday, January 15th, 2009. That's winter time when that plane that you were on crashed into the Hudson River. First of all, where were you coming from and going to when you were on that plane?
Okay. So I was actually at the end of a 3-day business trip where I started in Sarasota, Florida, and went to Petersburg, Virginia. Ended up in New York in a distribution center with my job with Oracle. We were doing distribution system checks for a potential client. And so I headed, back to Charlotte from that 3-day business trip. And candidly, I was not scheduled to be on the flight. I was scheduled to be on the 5 o'clock flight.
Wow.
But we started our day at 5 a.m. because distribution centers open up early. This one opened up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So our day started at 5. We got done at 10. So I was like, let's get home early. Every chance I get to get home, I try to take a chance. And so she put me on the flight called Miracle on the Hudson, or better known as U.S. Airways Flight 1549. And that's how I got on the flight.
It's everything happens for a reason. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but everything does happen for a reason. And before we before we went live today, I was saying to you, Dave, I've been thinking about you all weekend long, and I have another business on the side. I have a fitness business, and I was with a couple clients this morning talking about you and the plane. And I think about what I would do in those situations, and I know what I would do in that situation like that is, and we were talking about this before we went live. I'd be conducting, directing, helping, getting on in there. A lot of people may be very capable of that, but when they're in those life and death, God-fearing moments, I'm sure it was mayhem. I'm sure it had to have been crazy.
Well, it was one of the interesting things about what happened is no one really lost it that day, and I attribute that to something that when the Captain Sullenberger shared a few with us, some of the back of the story, I saw backstory details which you never hear in public. Is that the passenger makeup of the plane really had a lot to attribute to that outcome? Where, and you can take the experience. Have you ever seen the movie Flight? When he was flying from Orlando to Atlanta, and there's mayhem. People were freaking out all over the place.
Yeah.
Because people flying from in that situation are primarily families and kids and older people. And on this flight, you primarily had 90% of the people are business people like me and you, where basically can handle things ourselves and we can do our own thing. So you only had the variables were very slight. So there were people who got excited, but no one lost their heads. But what you just said is a point that I rarely talk about, but you don't know how people are really going to act until it happens. And you had people on that plane that I thought you think there would be leaders and step up, and all of a sudden, had to be a servant leader, had to step back, and other people who did things better than them handle things. And that's what sort of happened on that plane. The people who, and one of the things I learned from Tony, which I talk about a lot, is in the most uncertain times, the person with the most certainty is the one who becomes the leader at that moment. And so people who had the most certainty, the ones all of a sudden are looked at as leaders and started doing what you said, directing or conducting the situation. And that's what sort of happened on the right side of the plane where I went out, because one of the things that don't get talked about a lot is there was no crew on the right side of the plane giving us directions. All the crew went to the left side of the plane. So the right side of the plane was basically managed by people like me who had no experience in this, who never been through a plane crash and didn't know how to do the training, and Canada did not read the brochure that tells you how to handle things.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, leadership skills stepped up, teamwork skills stepped up, and that's why I talk about in my book, Moments Matter, about all these things that stepped up at that moment. And when you don't think you can handle it, all of a sudden leadership steps up and all of a sudden you get an outcome that never has happened before.
We're all capable. We are all capable of stepping up like that. I mean, that we're our human beings are designed. We are all capable for that. We were in Florida last week and came in on Thursday, and it was windy here. And somebody else, a client from this morning's husband, was flying in. I think a little late or a little earlier that day as well. I mean, the winds, as you're coming down into the airport, the winds, it's very turbulent. I'll tell you, there were a couple people that are letting out a couple of screams, and I'm looking at my husband going, oh my gosh, I need to go check the exit doors and make sure they're very capable.
I need to read a brochure again. Give me that brochure again.
Yeah, move over because, I mean, and I don't think about this every time I walk on a plane, a flight, but I walk by and I look at my husband, I'm like, I'd like to be in the exit row for a multitude of reasons. I'd like to be managing those doors if anything happens, and I also want all that leg room for the flight as well, but we're all capable to step up like that. And, it's interesting. I was visualizing when you were just talking how, they're over to the right, you're over to the left. And how it's like not to minimize, but it's like a Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire dance, where you've got strong leaders. Sometimes you have to step back, and especially in cases like that, people you would think that maybe wouldn't even lead in a circumstance like that are stepping up. So it's such a, I'll tell you what, I'm not a religious person, and I don't speak God, but I will take this moment, talk about the energy and God, how he's watching over that plane, and the talent of the pilot as well to take that down in the water. And it was wintertime, and so that water had to be blistering cold.
36 degrees, correct?
Yep. No casualties. I'm sure there were some scrapes, bumps, bruises, and whatever, but I mean, no casualty. I mean, it is a miracle on the Hudson. So how did this lead you to your last book here, Moments Matter?
Well, thank you. And you're exactly right. That's actually what the blog I wrote this week is about. That's from that perspective of some of the skills that we don't talk about the skill to be able to disassociate from your emotions in times of crisis. So it's a very good point you just picked up. But how the book really came about, Kim, was about 2 years ago in August, my former assistant Vicky and I were interacting one day, and she said, you need to document this one way or another, just for your kids and your grandkids. So if when you're not here, they know the story behind it. And I told her that's about the lady down the street there were two ladies sisters who lived together who are survivors of World War II. They were in the concentration camps in Bergen-Belsen. And I did not know that. I saw the books on their table one day when I was down there helping them with their TV. And I said, you need to record this. And they were just like, no, we don't talk about that. So Vicky really had, when she said that, so we spent 7 to 8, 9 hours on audio recording every single moment from that day. And so about a month later, when she gave me back the audio we were going through, we're like, there's a book here. There's these 12 things that you talk about consistently about these resources and skills that you and others use that day that could really be effective for people when they face a crisis, or I call face their own personal plane crash, that moment in life when they have to bear their own cross and something's going to happen. And everybody in life has, whether you're rich, young, old, it doesn't matter. Everybody's got that moment. So that's how the book came about. And all of a sudden, one day we were talking with Cindy, who was helping me co-write the book. And I said, one thing I realized during this plane crash is all the moments in your life do matter, because something 40 years ago that I did, I learned how to swim, caused me to save my life. Back in the Air Force Academy, when Captain Sullenberger, when he attended the Air Force Academy, had to learn how to glide a plane, and he never had to do that until that moment.
Yep. And
that's when all of a sudden we realized all these skills we learn all of our lives do matter. You never know when that one thing's going to happen. It might save yourself or save somebody else. And that's how the book came about. And so, we were sort of had it all together, but all of a sudden, then the movie was announced, and I knew the movie was coming out, but I couldn't say anything. And I was invited to be a part of the movie, and I'm like, well, we better get this book out, and because I want people to understand some of the skill sets that I used that day and some other people used, and so they can, before the movie comes out, they sort of read about it. That's how it really started, fast tracking it.
Yeah, you know something, Dave, I personally feel no skill is too small or too large on a day-to-day basis of emotions because we're a human being, we're full of emotions. I see a lot of people in business that do not learn because owning your own business is we have to learn their skills like I was saying earlier is and I see this not just with women because I've had a couple incidents with men as well in business. Do not step into their skills and remove the emotions out of the business. You know, and it could be just something as simple of a misunderstanding of an email to something that one was expecting, or all the way down to, like you say, your personal plane crash. And we all have personal plane personal plane crashes, and it's learning how to really not control. I don't like that word, that C word, control. It's learning how to manage our emotions so the learned skill set can kick in, so we can implement this is learned skill set. And no offense, Dave, not to minimize, I don't think your mom birthed you to be this, phenomenal leader and this phenomenal speaker. Those are skills that you have learned over the years.
I totally agree.
Yep.
I totally
and I
agree
want to get that across very loud and clear because, again, there's so many skills to owning a business. There's so many skills getting up on Monday morning and getting in your car and driving to a corporation, a brick and mortar. We need it all as human beings. This world needs it all, to move forward. It's just a matter of handling your personal plane crash or personal plane crashes. I love that. I'm going to borrow that from you now for a while.
You please do, because I think what you just said is very valid. I think my mother gave me life and taught me a lot of lessons that I used that day. But there's so many skills that I learned in the 45, 50 years up to that point that I and others used to make that situation happen. And that skill that I talked about this week, about the skill of a disassociation, Tony taught me that. Have you ever seen Tony on stage? You notice when someone goes extremely emotional on him, he disassociates. He is totally out of his body, talking in another world. And I learned that skill by being with him and talking to him about it. So if you look back at this day, if you want to dissect it, looking at how Captain Summer had to disassociate his emotions when he had to make the decision to go into Hudson, how people like me had to disassociate getting all out of our source. Now, some people didn't. Some people totally associated to it.
Yep.
And they right now still cannot fly a plane or don't want to be a part of anything. And so one thing I learned out of this, Kim, is you don't judge people. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know their backstory. So
Yep, absolutely. That's one of the things. And again, just driving down the street and someone, flips you off, and cuts you off or whatever. We don't know their backstory. That doesn't mean we have to agree with what they did. That doesn't mean we have to allow those behaviors, but to try and stay out of that judgment and not speed up and cut them off and all that. We don't know what's going on in literally in that person's back seat, so to speak, right there in that car. I just want to get real clear on that is we don't have to agree with that behavior, but to try to stay out of going into judgment. That's a tough skill. I mean, that is a tough, skill that we do. And, that's a lot of interpersonal growth work that Tony Robbins is able to do on a stage. And practice does not make perfect. Practice makes better. We don't arrive to perfection. That's right. And that's just like with yourself, Dave. It's a lot of turning in. It's a lot of interpersonal growth work to learn these skills and so to speak, master these skills to move these forward. And by the way, we're never done with these skills. We're never done until we leave this physical body. We're never done, and that's when we're completed. All right, I've got some questions before we move forward. Dave, please share your website and how everyone else can get in touch with you.
Well, that'd be great. Thank you. My website's DaveSandersonSpeaks.com, and I interact with everybody personally who goes to that website and sign up for my newsletter, so thank you for that. But if you want to get a very quick response from me, my Facebook, Dave Sanderson Speaks, is my page. I check that a lot. In fact, I check it too much, probably. LinkedIn, I do a lot now on LinkedIn with David Sanderson. And Twitter, my kids are teaching me how to Twitter and Periscope. So my Twitter is Dave Sanderson too, and I'm doing more with that. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. But one thing I pride myself on, and one thing I learned from people like Tony and Tom Hopkins and the people I interact with is, I respond to everybody. You get a response, and that's one of the reasons I had such a high customer service rating at Oracle, is because my clients knew that I'd be back with them within an hour period, and they could get a response. So that's the way I do my business likewise. So thank you.
Yeah, you are very responsive. There was some email interaction between you and I, and you were right on it. You were spot on it. And before my producer brought you on pre-going live, he said to me, "Oh my God, yes, I sent him the invite on Skype," and he was right on there. And I did say this when I launched the station 2 years ago. We're now going into the third year, and she's all shiny and pretty with Lynn Brunette is coming on, who was a client who's coming on, who has now come on as my partner. I said to my husband 2 years ago, I will never be too big that I cannot respond back. I don't care where I'm at. I don't care what I am doing. If I'm on vacation, and it may take me a day longer to respond to an email because I am on vacation, I will never be too big where I cannot respond back to people.
And that's one of the things I write about in my book is the skill set of responsiveness and how key it is to not only be success in business, but when you're in times of crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump in a little bit more here. So I see here that you have raised a lot of money for the American Red Cross.
I'm honored to do that. That the Red Cross was there for me and everybody else that day. There was only two groups that touched everyone that day. One was the ferries in New York and New Jersey, and the other were the Red Cross. So I've been blessed to be able to help them over 130 times now across the country and now in Canada to help raise much needed funds, because candidly, there's things that are happening 24/7 around the world that they're responding to, and they need money. They don't get any money from the government. So I donate my time and effort to make sure they can raise the money they need to have for people who, like me that day, who needed that helping hand. So I'm very honored to do that.
Yeah, they don't have, American Red Cross does not hesitate when we're having, in the Midwest, tornadoes are coming in and doing storms, devastation. They're there. They're an amazing organization. And I knew that all the revenue is all from personal private donations, that they don't take money from the government. But I'm glad you said that, because I don't think everybody realized that they don't get their funding from the government. It's private. No. It's private, personal people opening up their wallets and going out there like yourself and raising. And that is wonderful. How long were all of you waiting on wings of the plane, and water is floating around you? Oh my gosh.
So the ferries were there within 2 minutes of the plane crash, which is an amazing fact. Wow. I was actually in the plane waist deep in the 36-degree water for about 7 minutes. But, people on the wings were getting rescued within 2 to 3 minutes after the plane crashed, and they were out on the wings. And so it's an amazing level, like we talk about responsiveness. The ability to respond quickly was amazing in the New York and New Jersey area. Unfortunately, they've had to respond to things before.
Yeah. So how long you were in waist deep water? 7 minutes before you were literally coming off the plane?
7 minutes, and candidly, I was holding on to the lifeboat because it was floating out into the Hudson River, so I held it close to the wing so those people could get on the wing. But then there was a tugboat that hit the plane as it was backing out, which all of a sudden caused the plane to shift. All of a sudden I felt water going up my back, and I'm like, this is like Titanic, man. It's time to go. I can do no more. Get out of the plane, because the last thing I want to do is be the bottom of the plane inside of a plane at the bottom of the river. And that's when I jumped in and swam to the closest boat that I could find, which happened to be into that wing. So it's the EMTs will tell you they don't know how I swam. I just used I had adrenaline, and I just I made it a must. And but when I got on the ferry, I couldn't feel anything. I was so cold. I don't know if anybody has never been in that situation where you've been in the water for 7-8 minutes, 36-degree water, and you can't feel anything. It's like your whole body is just, you're in an outer body experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing what our the muscle of our minds, when we can go into adrenaline and overload like that, and just, it's like you were saying a moment ago about Tony Robbins, how he disassociates when it comes to the emotions when he's up on the stage. It's the same thing that you did. You knew That's it. If I don't make a move, I'm going down to the bottom of the river in this plane. That's it, and that's not an option. You're such an amazing man, Dave. I really don't even know you that well, but I feel like I've known you for such a long time. It just so amazing, such an amazing story. So when you travel and speak, I assume that a lot of this this plane crash, the personal plane crash, and this plane crash is coming in to what you are speaking on.
It is true. I speak giving people a background of the story, what really happened that day, and the inside story. But then I really transition and share some of these lessons and strategies of what really transpired, what you can take away from it. Because, excuse me, every day something around the plane crash happens. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing whether someone calls me or I get an interview for somebody, a TV or radio station. It's something always comes up and some new distinction may come out. So it's I think we're all blessed. I've been with Captain Sullenberger and Captain Skiles, and we all have similar experience that every day something happens around this that we're sort of all tied together for the rest of our lives with.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that interesting how something so life-threatening and devastating can really bring together a bonding relationship?
Yeah, I'm honored to be associated with this and know these people because I think we all have something that we all maybe we'll handle ourselves differently, but we all have a common thread that something that happened and it could have been so tragic. Just one thing changes and everything could have gone a different direction. So I'm very honored that I'm able to go out and share the story from it, but also share the message of hope and some of the lessons and things that hopefully people can use when they face around that personal time they have their personal plane crash.
We're going to get into one or two of those skills here in a moment. Yep. I always like to leave the listeners with one big golden nugget or a small golden nugget on top of all the golden nuggets that the guests bring to this show. I've got a couple questions here, Dave, and please, I want you to feel into these questions. Don't get too thought-provoked and just get right on in here. So what we measure determines our success. So how do you measure your success?
That's a great question. The way I measure my success, when I was in sales, is all about numbers. And, make so many calls and this and that. And Kaylee, at first when I started this business, I swear I started looking at, but now I really look at it as, have I impacted a person a day? And if I go back at the end of the day and I go back through all my calls, my emails, if I impacted somebody's life and if I've had a successful day. Now, that doesn't pay for the health care and everything else, but you know what? It's like the Bible says, it comes back tenfold. And I think that's exactly what's happened to me. Everything comes back tenfold, and as long as I have faith that I'm doing the right thing and impacting somebody, that's how I measure my business. Have I impacted at least one person every day?
That was my Facebook post today. I start each day by telling myself what a positive influence I am on this world. It's by
How about that?
By Peter Desamy, and it was a happy Monday. And it's interesting the likes and the responses and the shares that I'm getting on that. And how cool that would all be if we just wake up and we are a positive influence. We are. Each and every single one of us out there is a miraculous being that we are, because we are miracles. It's miraculous, and that we are a positive influence on this world. I think God would just go, "Yay, rock on, woohoo!"
Yep.
I
think God expects us to do that. I think he expects us to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel the majority of human beings are getting a little tripped up on that, or not doing that, or not even feeling into that for whatever the circumstances are. But you know what? We just take a deep breath. Hey, we are miraculous. We are miraculous. All right. So, Dave, what has been the largest challenge to date that you have turned into an opportunity?
Largest challenge to date. Well, going back on through my entire life, I would probably say when I was with a company by the name of ADP, I was a top salesperson, and I had a new manager, and the new manager's first duty was to hand me a check for $63,000 for commission. And he looked me in the eye and brand new guy said, "You'll never earn this much again as long as I'm here." And that's the moment I realized, you know what? That was sort of my moment. I had to step up and say, I'm going to prove you wrong. I think that was probably the biggest moment in not only my business life, but changed everything the way I looked at things. Like, no one can limit me. No
Yeah.
one can limit me. And Canley, if I let him limit me, then that's on me.
Yep.
So that was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah. I love when people say, you can't.
Yep.
First of
Yep.
all, that CAN apostrophe T word needs to be removed from the Webster dictionary. And it needs to be the CAN constantly. But I love when someone says to me,
Yep.
I can't. Whoop! I turn around and
Yep.
spin on my heels. I'm like, you don't know me if you tell
That's
me I
exactly
can't.
right.
Just watch on, because now I'm going to take it on as a challenge.
Yep.
So, Dave, how do you daily continue to push yourself to stretch and grow?
Every day I have a set of rituals, and I do the personal work. That I think health comes number one, and that came from years ago when I saw Tony on stage, and a lady basically said, "Tony, I just want to bless you for hope you have health the rest of your life." And that sort of hit me. It's like, because if you don't have your health, you have nothing. So I really get myself to going with doing a fitness routine, but every day I do something in personal development that gets my mind right for the day. And whatever theme I have for the day, I put it that way. So I think that's what really gets me going. Now, some days it's harder than the others, but I always try to focus on, like I'm doing right now. I've been challenged to do 22 push-ups a day for 22 days for the Wounded Warriors. And I've accepted that challenge because there's 22 men dying, or people dying a day coming back from Wounded Warriors. So
Yeah.
that something like that drives me likewise. That's how I get my mind right to be able to affect people every day.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that mindset. Boy, that could really either lift you up or take you on down.
Yep.
And that's a muscle, just like, your health, that's a mental health. I mean, we do bicep curls for the biceps. Boy, you got to do some mindset curls for the muscle
right.
mind. I'm huge on that. I'm really, really huge on that. So Dave, when I'm think back in corporate or stepping into your own, your own business, have you ever felt like giving up?
Oh, I think there's occasion I have felt like giving up, but as you just mentioned a moment ago, the word my mom hated most in life was the word can't. And she would never, every time we said that in our house, she said, if you can't do it, you must do it. She made you do it. So every time I got to that point, I always think back as, if my mother was here, she would kick me in the backside and said, don't ever say that. You can accomplish anything, right? But so what I've learned over the last 30 plus years of business is it's called patience and persistence. The one thing I think is a challenge now with the millennials coming up in Canada is that they have such immediate satisfaction and gratification. They don't know what it's like to have to go through something to get that outcome. And so, and I see these kids all the time that think that they can come out of college, make $100,000 and get a job, and this is going to happen because mommy and daddy have always given them that way. So I think it's all about persistence. Patience and persistence is sort of my key theme I go to when I get to that point. Said, why don't I just give up and go get a job and work like everybody else? I don't want to be like everybody else.
Yep. I hear you loud and clear, Dave. And you know something? I think, especially, I don't have children, and you have 4 kids. That lack of patience, because we've become such an instantaneous Google 4-second society. And you're right. I see these kids. We were talking before we became live. We were talking about Michigan State and the basketball over the weekend. And I see these kids coming out of great universities like that, Michigan State, U of M, and that's just 2 awesome ones out of multiple ones here in Michigan, not to mention across our country. And they have such a high expectation when they graduate with no experience, just that college degree, expecting a 6-figure. It's like, wow. I mean, that expectation. And it's, it is patience and persistence. But again, we live in a society of that Google instantaneous, quick, lack of patience, go, turn around. Hey, so Dave, do you have any regrets?
Oh, I think one of the biggest regrets I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of regrets. Probably the biggest regret that if I had to go back to my entire life is when I did not go for my Eagle Scout. I was a Life Scout. I was very good in athletics and all sports, and we moved, and my mother said I'll regret it one day. And, I sort of poo-pooed it at that point. I was, you think you're pretty hot when you're 15, 16 years old, and you got a life by the horns, and all of a sudden you realize after all this time that that's probably something I should have done, that my mother told me to do, that I didn't pay attention to, that probably would have paid off in spades, not only just because of getting the recognition, but more importantly, being able to say that I'm an Eagle Scout, that I'm one of the top 1% of all these people coming out. And I think that's my biggest regret, that I did not finalize my Eagle Scout when I had that opportunity.
You know, Dave, it's interesting you brought that up, the Eagle Scout. A couple of years ago, I was invited. I participate in this 8-week leadership course. It's a not-for-profit here in Michigan, and it's an 8-week leadership course inside schools. I'm one of the facilitators. And one of the students in there was completing his Eagle Scout as he was graduating from high school and getting ready to leave to go to college. And I got invited to that, and I was like, Eagle Scout, I mean, wow, this is such a big deal. You know, I didn't know much about it. And my husband was like, this is a huge deal. We had some local politicians there for this young man. And I'm just like, wow, it is huge. So I understand where you're coming from. It is a very prestigious, and it is only 1% that finishes that. It is.
Right. So,
I think you're Eagle Scouting in other ways, though, Dave.
I think I've took some of the skills and applying it a different way. You're right. I think my mother would be proud that at least I'm using some of the skills. Maybe if I didn't get the recognition, but got the skills.
Yeah, you're definitely Eagle Scouting in other ways. Yeah, I agree. All right. So, as a CEO of your business and a CEO of your life, how do you end your day?
When I end my day, the last thing that I do is I pray. The last thing I do, after I get myself ready, I just got to say a prayer, thanking God for giving me another day and give me another opportunity the next day to hopefully impact somebody's life and find another place to speak or do something that I can impact somebody's life and share the miracle. That's how I end my day every day.
Mm-hmm. With that gratitude. I love that. It's having a conversation of gratitude. Absolutely. Yep. All right. Before we wrap the show up here, Dave, could you let the listeners know one more time how they can get in touch with you?
Well, that would be great. Thank you. So if you can get in touch with me, you can email me at dave@davesandersonspeaks.com or check in with me on my website, davesandersonspeaks.com. I interact with everybody. If Facebook is, as Kim knows, I'm all over and probably too much at Dave Sanderson Speaks. And you can LinkedIn me at David Sanderson and Twitter me at Dave Sanderson too. And if you want a copy of my book, it's out there on the website now. We finally got it up in the shopping cart. And I'd really be excited I would be able to personalize a book for you.
Yeah, everybody, go on over to that website and grab that book. I cannot wait to get my hands on it, because of all the insights that I know that are just sitting there waiting between those pages and the sentences of the print. All right, last question here, Dave. Let's send the listeners away with, is there any one skill, a nugget here that you'd like to send somebody off that they can say, God, I came away from listening, on Kim's show, Dave. I'm going to go get the book, but what can I do immediately this afternoon? One thing that can enhance someone's hope, enhance someone's leadership skill, just one thing, whatever that is.
I always say the skill that I will leave someone with, and I always will lead with, is the skill of state management, meaning how to manage your mind at any moment in time. And you can do that 3 ways, either through your body or physiology. You can do it with what you focus on. You can do it the way you talk to yourself. And that's if I can leave that one skill with everybody, so if they face that time of challenge and they can get their mind in a very empowering state, they can break through that fear and get anything accomplished. That's the one skill I would leave them with.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Dave. I wish you lived closer, and I just wish Traverse City, when you're here in 2 weeks, was a little closer. It's a little, you're just amazing, and there was no accident that day that you were on that plane on January 15th, 2009, in waist deep of 30-degree water. It was no accident. The pilot, God, he was amazing. How he, had to think fast on his feet, so to speak, and to get that plane safely down. Not one casualty. You're just a great blessing, Dave, and I'm just so grateful that you were on my show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. I'm very honored, and we'll let you know when I'm in Michigan, and we'll definitely hook up and have a Starbucks someplace.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much. Dave, you could just sit tight. I'm going to wrap up the show. And again, hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Another Life Chats, and please reach out to Dave. Swing by the website there and, log on and get his newsletter or look at the blog or whatever. We all have something to share with one another. And the Moments Matter book, and really take a look at your own personal plane crash or your own personal plane crashes, and what else, the patience and the persistence, and really get into that head space. I don't want you to leave your heart, but really get into that head, that muscle head there, to really leverage yourself, because that's what we're all here for. We're all here to serve and pay it forward. So again, Dave, thank you so much. Everyone, join us right back here at Bold Radio Station, same time, same place next week. And there's a couple other amazing shows going on throughout the week. Stop on by the Bold Radio Station's website and get on out there and just make it a wonderful, out of control, bold, awesome day. We'll see you right back here. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for joining yet another Real Life Chats with Kim. Come on back next week, same place and time, where the boldest of bolds share their truths.